everybody. Welcome. Thank you for coming out tonight to our Housing Options Workshop. It's hosted by the City of Bethlehem, Lehigh University Small Cities Lab, and Woodsong and Associates. So we are excited tonight to talk about ways to increase housing options in the City of Bethlehem, something we have heard from residents through both Opening Doors, the city's affordable housing strategy, and then our accessory dwelling unit zoning study, that there is a great need and interest for it. So you tonight are going to be able to help kind of weigh in as we get later into the evening with some of the boards that you've seen and some of the models to really talk through how you think these policies could play out in your neighborhood. But before we kind of get to the interactive part, we are going to do a short presentation to kind of ground you in the work that's been done to date. Maybe you came here tonight and you have no idea what an ADU is. So you're going to learn all about that tonight. So, and by the way, I am Sarah Satullo. I am the Deputy Director of Community Development for the City of Bethlehem. And one of the first projects when I was hired with the city in 2022 was leading the city's affordable housing strategy, Opening Doors. And over the course of that process, we heard from over 3,500 residents, stakeholders like bank lenders and realtors and housing developers about how rapidly Bethlehem's housing market had changed, how quickly we saw a decline in affordability, and how much residents were struggling to find housing choices that match their income, their lifestyle, the size of their family, their households. And one of the recommendations out of the Opening Doors study, which we released in January of 2024, was to explore ways to give residents more housing choice through accessory dwelling units, which you may have heard of them. One of the historic types that we have in Bethlehem are alley houses, which exist all over the city. They also are known as maybe in-law suites, granny flats. They can be standalone structures. They can be internal kind of conversions to a garage basement. When you're a city like Bethlehem, where almost all of our land is developed, you have to kind of get creative about ways to find housing choice and options. And we found that we need about 1,100 housing units to meet the needs of the 80,000 people that call Bethlehem home today. And that is why we have an acute rental shortage, and we have a 2% rental vacancy right now, which is really considered a crisis level. A healthy market would be between 6 to 8%. So as part of kind of all of the implementation of the Opening Doors recommendations, the city has been working with Lehigh and the Small Cities Lab and hired Woodsong and Associates to help us figure out how best to expand housing options and choices in the city of Bethlehem. We were really, really grateful because Lehigh got a large research grant that has allowed us to dive super deep into our local housing market, the history of alley houses and ADUs in Bethlehem. And then we were able to bring in Garland Woodsong from Woodsong Associates, and his firm has helped lead a lot of the nation's kind of groundbreaking ADU work on the west coast of the country, where these are a housing solution that has been utilized for much longer than in East Coast communities that are more new to the housing affordability crisis. So I'm going to hand it over to Garland here for the presentation tonight. And this is just kind of our workshop agenda that he can walk you through once he kind of introduces himself.
Great. Hello, everyone. I'm Garland Woodsong with Woodsong Associates, and I'm really stoked to be here in Bethlehem with you all talking about alley houses or accessory dwelling units. Just a little bit about myself and the firm. I was just talking with staff yesterday and opining that this feels like a third wave ADU project, which is sort of like a reference to third wave coffee, right? And so the first wave was the first cities to legalize what were then called accessory dwelling units. Portland, Oregon was one of them, right at the turn of the century, the 1990s to the aughts. And that was a certain set of policies. They kind of erred on the side of being a little bit conservative because it was the first time anyone had done that anywhere in the country. And so they wanted to make it work. The second wave, I would say, would be when California legalized accessory dwelling units statewide over a period of about 6 years, from 2016 to 2022. And we were part of that. We were part of writing the local regulations to implement that state policy in several communities in Southern California. We also advised Boston when they just wanted to do one neighborhood as a test study to test legalizing ADUs, and so they chose the Mattapan neighborhood, and so we helped them when they were writing the policies to legalize what they called at that point in time additional dwelling units for Mattapan. And that experience feels directly applicable to Bethlehem because the built form of Mattapan and the built form of Bethlehem are very, very similar. You've got a lot of, they call them triple deckers in Boston, of course, but those are not dissimilar from the townhomes, the twins, and the alley houses that are in plentiful supply here in Bethlehem. So, let's see, is this load to the accelerate?
I got the team with well.
There we go. Okay. So let's start off. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the local housing history and context here in Bethlehem. Hopefully this is not new information to most of you, but this is sort of like a book report. Just treat this section of the presentation like a book report. I read your book and I'm telling you what it meant to be, like paraphrasing, right? But first let's start off with what is an accessory dwelling unit. An ADU is a family-friendly, community-creating form of housing. It's been around for centuries. Each ADU is an additional living unit that shares a lot with a larger primary home. And a legal ADU, to be a legal ADU, has to include facilities for living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation. And so this diagram is just showing an alley house as one type of ADU, but you can also see it's got a second type of ADU here, an internal conversion, which is when you essentially put up a firewall and a fire door and then create a whole new house within a house that has its own kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, living area. And both are considered legal ADUs. There's many different kinds of ADUs. Even within that, you could have a conversion of former attached garage or other space into an ADU. You can have conversion of a detached garage or other outbuilding into an ADU. You could build a new construction attachment, like an addition to a home that's attached on maybe one wall, and then the ADU is the addition. Or you could build a new freestanding building that's an ADU. And Bethlehem's housing history, alley houses have been a part of the city's fabric since at least 1890. I suspect that maybe even longer than that, but definitely you have documentation going back to 1890. They were an organic response to the growing need for housing throughout the city and were constructed primarily by residents and steelworkers. 20th century zoning strongly prioritized single-family zoning, however, and my understanding is that when Bethlehem consolidated from 3 cities into one, it implemented zoning, and that's when alley houses and ADUs were made illegal.
Yeah.
And so, through this project, the Lehigh University Small Cities Lab, which is here with us today, has identified 919 existing alley houses in Bethlehem. The vast majority are still existing and lived in today. This is kind of a distribution of them across the city. And so, why are we doing this project right now? Housing stress is already part of the daily life of folks at Bethlehem. Folks are having trouble finding affordable homes, right-sized homes, and options for multi-generational living. And this is widespread across neighborhoods and income levels. The public is asking for more flexibility. We did a survey at the end of last fall, and we asked folks about their housing situation. And 92% of survey respondents said that expanding housing options is either very or somewhat important, with this level of support present citywide in all the neighborhoods. And Bethlehem has done this before. From historic alley houses to today's accessory dwelling units, incremental housing is part of this city's fabric. And household composition has structurally shifted in Bethlehem. Married couple households declined from 2000 to 2010, while single adult households increased substantially over that period. Now, more than a third of the city of Bethlehem lives in single-person households. So this means that the dominant nuclear family household now represents a smaller share of the total than in prior decades. And many households consist of single adults, single parents, roommates, caregivers, or other folks in a shared living arrangement. The unit mix, the mix of types of homes in Bethlehem, doesn't match the household size distribution. So more than a third of households in the city are one-person households, but only 20% of the homes in the city are studios or one-bedrooms. So there's structural mismatch between the size of many existing homes and the size of many existing households. And this mismatch can increase cost burden and increase or reduce housing choice. Multi-generational living is already common across income levels across the city. Approximately 35 to 45% of survey respondents across most income brackets report some experience with a multi-generational household. And these living rates are similar citywide. This indicates demand for flexibility within our existing neighborhoods. And supply remains tight. Rental vacancy rates in Bethlehem remain too low. As Sarah mentioned, they're 2%. They should be at least 4 to 5%. The landlords in the room, if there's any of you, I think might quibble with pushing it all the way up to 7 to 8%. But 4 to 5% is a nice balance between good for landlords and good for tenants. And regional analysis projects a demand for not just the 1,100 within the city of Bethlehem, but over 5,000 net new homes are needed in Bethlehem's 20-minute primary market area, according to a recent study. So demand pressures are regional and ongoing. ADUs are an incremental production tool. They're part of a broader toolbox of strategies to expand housing choice and relieve pressure in the housing market. Even modest annual ADU production can help relieve pressure and provide housing options without requiring large-scale redevelopment. And to just give you an idea of what I say when I mean modest, 20 years ago, when the concept of ADUs first came out, I was working at regional planning, and we would often plan for housing growth in a region. And we would never plan for ADUs to be more than 5 to 10% of the overall housing picture. And I still think that's about right. This is the missing part of the market. It's not going to solve the housing crisis on its own. It's not a silver bullet, but it needs to be part of the solution. And when you ask how much of a part, that's my answer: 5 to 10%. So small houses, a small part of the solution. So this project, we have some desired policy outcomes we'd like to get to. We'd like to align zoning and housing production pools with observed household composition, documented multi-generational living patterns, demonstrated unit size, supply and demand mismatch, and this tight vacancy compared to regional demand. We're aiming to legalize and streamline ADU policy in response to demand that already exists. So next, I'm going to invite Wes and Lehigh folks to come up and tell us about the Alley House project.
Thanks, so Peter.
Hi everyone, I'm Wes Hyatt. I'm an assistant professor at Lehigh University, co-director of the Small Cities Lab. So usually other small cities folks back there. Happy to be here. This project started, I think we were thinking 4 years ago now, but the lines are kind of blurred. With a few of us in the room kind of sitting together thinking, what is a way that we could address, as Garland's been saying, the kind of housing challenge in Bethlehem without saying, let's build a 100-unit tall building, right? So we started just walking the alleys and saw all of these existing alley houses that Garland's been talking about on places like Lawfer Street, on the south side, and a few other places throughout the city. And we realized, well, we can't really build these anymore, right? As Garland's saying. And we just had to think, well, why is that? And that is this big, scary thing called zonus, right? A lot of texts on pages saying we can no longer kind of build these units that, for so long, have served Bethlehem families. So the project kind of grew out of that over the past 4 years. Big party. And getting to where we are today, where we're actually thinking about all the sort of both technical but also very human considerations about how we live together on the same lot, right? So all the models that you see on the table right now are kind of outcomes of a multi-year research, design, and kind of just working together project to think about what these alley houses and ADUs could look like. And we really want to get your kind of responses to how these things feel to you as we go forward this evening. So just very quickly talking about what's on the screen. An alley house is really a alley-facing unit, right? If you've been on Lawfer Street or Morton Street up on the south side, you've seen these. That is in the backyard of a street-facing unit, right? You'll probably notice on those streets, on those alleys, really, that the size and shape of that alley house is not so different than the street-facing house, right? It's pretty similar, right? Sometimes the porch might be a little thinner. You might just have a stoop. And the street-facing side is kind of larger, has a porch, maybe a little front yard. But other than that, they're pretty similar, right? This is true on across all sort of three sides of the city. And while the ADUs that you'll hear about tonight are some of all these different types that Garland has spoke about, this is kind of the historic core of Bethlehem's sort of built fabric, right? These things have happened before, and we're just sort of saying we should build them again. As we're seeing here, there's all these really great kind of assets or like reasons to do an alley house. Incremental development, that just means not a bunch of them all at once or really tall or really wide, but one or two in a few places across the block. Small scale financing, you don't need $3 million to build one. Family-based construction, same idea, right? This is coming from a family or perhaps to support intergenerational living, like your mother or grandmother might want to live behind you in the ADU or alley house. It supports walkable neighborhoods. And there's shared infrastructure, right? There's a potential to not have to, overhaul sewer, all these kinds of things for ADUs. So just to repeat, what changed with these alley houses? In the 20th century, we found around between 1925 and let's say 1950, 1960-ish, alley houses were gradually made illegal in our zoning. Right? It wasn't all at once. It didn't happen like a flip of the light switch. But fast forward to today, you can't build these things anymore, and we're just proposing to do that again. 919 of these are still inhabited. That's how many we counted. We sent a bunch of students out on like the hottest day in July last year to walk every single. There's 50 miles of alleys in Bethlehem, if you didn't know, and they counted every single one. And we found 919, and they still are occupied, well loved. You probably know someone that lives on an alley, and if you don't, well, we can introduce you to some folks because we went out and spoke with them, and interviewed them and collected their stories to see how they like living on the alley. And they really do love living on the alley. This is a kind of well-loved housing type of the city. So yes, back to the future. We want to do this again. Build within that same small-scale footprint, but not just do this again, but do more of more kinds, right? So while we're talking about alley houses, we're also talking about these internal conversions, garage renovations, all of these kinds of items.
Thanks, Wes. So, bottom line is we think we can do this again here. It's not a new housing type. Bethlehem has a local working model, and incremental housing has its historic legitimacy. So the legalizing ADUs is not introducing a new form, it's restoring a historic Bethlehem housing pattern in a modern regulatory secularism. So let me just talk briefly about some development basics for if you want to build an ADU. What does that look like? Generally there's three phases, as with any construction project. There's pre-development. There's, you're working on design, architectural drawings, zoning review, permit applications, fees, plan revisions, approvals. Then there's actual construction, site work, foundation, framing, utilities, systems, interior and exterior finishes. And then finally, there's the inspection regime, which is linked to the permitting, the plan review process by the city, There's a series of required inspections that you must hit as you go through the construction process in order to receive final approval and a certificate of occupancy. And the city can't touch every single stage of this process, and our goal is to streamline where the city touches the process to reduce friction, make it easier to build.
And go.
We in the survey, we asked folks to tell us what they thought the biggest barriers might be. And I'll admit, it's a little bit cheeky to ask someone what the biggest barrier is to do something that's illegal. But it's like sort of like, imagine if we legalized, what do you think the next biggest barriers might be, right? And so folks said, well, construction cost, for sure. Like hard costs are insane right now. We all know that. Access to financing, that might be a barrier. That might be kind of hard. Permitting complexity, even if it's legal, navigating the permitting process is not necessarily easy. On-site parking requirements. If you have to provide space for a car, especially on a narrow alley lot, you might have to choose between alley house or finding space for the car. You might not be able to solve for both. So that's a significant constraint. It's what led Wes's team to do a carriage house as their first alley house, because that allowed them to accommodate cars on the ground floor and then people atop. And then lot size, space constraints, very much related to parking, and neighborhood acceptance. You don't want to make enemies with your neighbors by building a home in the backyard, right? Like you want things to be compatible, and you want to be able to have a barbecue and have your neighbors come over and still be friendly. The project is done, right? And apologize for all those nailing guns or whatever the noise was during the cabinet framing. So policy decisions directly influence many of these barriers. Your input tonight is going to help determine how Bethlehem addresses some of these less destiny. Let me briefly cover some more of what we heard from the survey. So we received 441 total responses, 411 English, 30 in Spanish, with responses from all Bethlehem neighborhoods. And we were satisfied with the margin of error and the confidence interval that we achieved statistically on the survey. And also very happy with the representation we received from all of the neighborhoods. One neighborhood was not overrepresented or underrepresented in the results. In general, we asked folks if they've experienced any of kind of a menu of housing hardships throughout the past year, and it's surprising how many people did know someone or themselves experience difficulty finding housing that fits your budget, or they needed to leave the city due to housing costs, or they're living with multiple generations in one house, or they needed to downsize but were unable to find a smaller home, or they're having trouble finding accessible housing for seniors or folks with disabilities, or they're interested in adding or living in an additional unit, but that's hard right now. About the lowest response rate that we got was none of the above, right? So most people are experiencing some housing stress in one way, shape, form, or another. The key takeaway is that housing stress is widespread across Bethlehem, with difficulty finding affordable housing, and multi-generational living reported similar rates in nearly all the neighborhoods. There's interest in adding or living in an additional living unit citywide, consistently across neighborhoods, across income levels. Lower income respondents were more likely to report cost-related challenges, while higher income respondents experienced fewer affordability pressures, which is expected, but it's an important activity signal of what should be steered towards when we're designing these policies. And finally, multi-generational living cuts across income levels, with roughly 35 to 45% of respondents in most income brackets reporting some experience living in a multi-generational house community. And so I mentioned that we received citywide 92% support for housing options, with that percentage across all neighborhoods indicating that it's either very important or somewhat important for Bethlehem to expand housing options. And so this consistency response suggests that housing availability is perceived as a citywide issue. It's not confined to specific neighborhoods or populations. And the benefits of adding 80 units are they increase housing availability and choice, they create multi-generational living opportunities, provide rental income for homeowners, they can more efficiently use existing land and infrastructure, they allow local workers to live close to where they work, they provide smaller or flexible housing options for singles, couples, or first-time renters. People are pretty unanimous in agreeing that, yeah, these are the benefits. In fact, the only benefits that were on the menu that people didn't choose were none of the above or other. So that's it. I was surprised by this level of support in the survey. So yeah, ADUs are viewed as a multi-solution tool, and the city should consider these are the things once we steer towards when we're writing policy to legalize ADUs in Bethlehem. Design consistency with neighborhood styles important. Like we said, infrastructure capacity and demand for things like utilities and roads, parking availability, privacy, who will live there. People thought all of these issues were important. The only issue that people didn't think was important was none of the above. So you're getting a sense of what we heard. Infrastructure capacity, parking availability are the concerns across all neighborhoods. Design consistency ranked relatively high, especially in Northeast and West Bethlehem, indicating that aesthetics are similarly as important to some residents as the more practical concerns. And privacy is something that we definitely want to think about. The perceived barriers are as much informational and financial as physical. Also, which indicates the importance of writing clear rules and providing technical assistance and financing tools. So, pivoting from the survey, now let's talk about how zoning policy can respond to this context and everything we heard in the survey. So now I'm going to review the policy options that are reflected on these 4 boards behind you. Which I believe the backside of the boards are in Spanish. If anyone's a Spanish speaker, then let us know and we can make sure you can see the backside of the boards. No, sorry, the Spanish on the front side of the boards. It's in a smaller font text below the English. I'm sorry. So the boards are numbered. Topic 1 is over there to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So starting with topic 1, household function, size, and accessory status. So some context. Survey feedback indicated strong interest in multi-generational living and aging in place. So this topic explores who ADUs should serve in Bethlehem through size, bedroom count, and livability expectations. Greater flexibility around size and configuration support multi-generational households, long-term housing stability, accessibility, and family caregiving. More restrictive zoning can limit the perceived neighborhood impact. So the questions we're trying to grapple with are how should ADU size shape who it realistically serves? Smaller units may reinforce accessory character, larger units may better support multi-generational living. So on the board, you'll see that there's 3 options. For topic 1, the first one in orange is smaller sizes with less perceived impact. So this option is keep ADUs more modest in scale, more oriented towards 1 and 2% households. The blue one, proportional moderate sizing. This would allow ADUs that include multiple bedrooms and support multi-generational living, but with a policy rule that said they should remain proportional to the primary dwelling. The green one, larger ADUs for larger households. Under this option, ADUs might be larger and more fully equipped as independent living spaces, and the size restrictions would focus on the context of the lot. So how much open space there is on the lot, how much room do you have to build ADU, rather than perhaps fixed limits. And so what we're going to do is, once I'm done explaining each of the boards, we'll hand you all some sticky dots, and then we'll do a voting exercise. We'll ask you to stand up and go to each of the boards and vote for each of these options for which one you would prefer. So you would put your sticker on orange for smaller ADUs, blue for proportional or moderate-sized ADUs, or green or larger ADUs for larger households would be how you'd vote on this.
Is that this?
So let's go on to the next one. Topic 2 is parking requirements and feasibility. This topic examines whether and when on-site parking should be required for ADUs and how parking requirements affect feasibility on Bethlehem's existing lots. Reducing or eliminating on-site parking requirements can substantially increase the number of lots where ADUs are feasible, particularly on smaller, constrained properties, while preserving yard space, reducing construction costs, and allowing for more flexible building placement. Requiring parking may address concerns about on-street congestion or spillover on the other hand. So the question here is, how do we accommodate cars while legalizing ADUs? Should off-street parking be required? What if requiring parking made it infeasible to construct an ADU on the site? Could off-street parking be subsidized but not required? What about regulations for on-street parking? And so on this graphic on the left, this is just a simple walking map showing how long it goes, how long it would take you to walk in terms of distance from one location to the nearest transit stop. And in many cities, that's how parking is regulated. If you were within, say, a half-mile walking distance of a transit stop or a frequent transit stop, then you don't have to build parking. But if you're outside of that area, then you have to build parking. So this is kind of illustrating what that might look like. So, topic 2, parking requirements and feasibility options. Option 1 would be require off-street parking in most or all cases. One additional off-street space generally required per ADU. Blue, or option 2, would be parking is waived under defined conditions. So parking is not required in certain contexts, such as homes near transit or walkable areas, homes with alley access, or conversions of existing structures, or where on-street parking capacity is available. And then option 3 would be just no off-street parking requirement. ADUs are not required to provide an additional off-street parking space. So again, when you get your stickers when you break, just vote for whichever one of those feels right to you. We want to understand kind of how you view the trade-off between a place to park a car or a place to house a human. Like, how do we weigh this?
Great. Sure.
Topic 3 is form, height, So this topic examines how ADUs take physical form on the lot, including height, building configuration, and orientation. Expanding form flexibility can improve feasibility on constrained lots, preserve usable open space, and support traditional blue yard or alley-oriented patterns. Height flexibility increases feasibility on narrow lots, and more restrictive standards may limit the perceived impact but reduce feasibility.
So the dark those.
And so ADUs can come in all shapes and sizes. You can have a single-story ADU, a two-story, a three-story ADU. I haven't seen anything called an ADU that's above 3 stories yet, but that just states that that experience is probably less true. So yeah. On topic 3, option 1, the orange option, would be a lower profile emphasis. So this would limit ADUs maybe to single-story and limit their lot coverage to reinforce a modest scale. Option 2, the blue one, context-based limits, would allow 2-story or carriage house configurations with alley-oriented designs permitted on municipal lots. And then option 3, the green one, incentive-based limits, would allow for additional height or lot coverage under perhaps certain conditions.
Thank you.
Okay, so topic 4 is placement, conversions, in relationship to existing homes. So this topic examines whether where ADUs should be located on lot and whether policies should prioritize conversions of existing structures, new detached construction, or flexibility across both. It also considers how ADUs relate to primary homes in terms of attachment, architectural compatibility, and building separation. Encouraging conversions, for instance, can reduce construction costs and neighborhood disruption. Allowing detached structures may expand options on certain lots, however. So flexibility across approaches can unlock ADU types that work on a wide range of properties. So some of the questions here: how could different lot types support different ADU forms? How much flexibility should be given to the placement of ADUs on a lot? And should ADUs be allowed to replace driveways within the front setback, for instance? So option one, the orange option would be a conversion priority approach, where ADUs are primarily encouraged for internal conversions, garage conversions, or additions.
So you said you started.
Option two, blue option would be a detached rear yard emphasis, with ADUs typically being new freestanding buildings located in the rear yard. And then option three, the green option, full flexibility, conversions, additions, detached structures, carriage houses, or ADUs in the front setback, and hybrid approaches would be allowed, subject to setback and height coverage standards. Topic 5, design expectations and neighborhood context. This explores how ADU design should respond to neighborhood character and how design expectations affect cost, predictability, and access to different construction types, including modular or factory-built units. Clear, measurable, objective design standards can reduce cost and uncertainty. More prescriptive or neighborhood-specific standards may shape aesthetic outcomes, but they might also increase climate costs. So the question is, how might design standards affect cost predictability? Should new construction of ADUs in Bethlehem be regulated so that they look similar to the form of existing buildings? Option one, the orange option, would be minimal stylistic regulation. So ADUs would be subjective to clear, objective citywide standards focused on style and form without detailed stylistic rules. Option two, the blue one, context-sensitive standards would apply additional form-based objective design rules in specific areas, such as historic districts where architectural continuity is a high priority. Option three, the green option, a hybrid approach, would have citywide objective standards involving height, size, privacy, etc., that would apply broadly. The targeted context-based design expectations were clearly justified. Again, for instance, historic neighborhoods. Topic 6, we want to explore intensity and the number of ADUs allowed per lot. You can allow one ADU per lot. You might want to allow 2 ADUs per lot to better expand the housing supply to support affordability strategies to make more efficient use of land and infrastructure. However, limiting ADUs to just 1 per lot might reinforce slower, more incremental change. But I'm going to show you what this diagram is. So this is showing one way you could fit 2 ADUs in a lot. The first ADU would be a detached carriage house. The second one would be invisible. It would just be an addition to the regular house. When it's done, you wouldn't be able to know it was there. So you'd only see 1 ADU. You'd see the new building. But in reality, there'd be 2 ADUs, meaning there'd be 3 homes on this lot. Very efficient use of resources. Do we want to allow that? That's the question. How many ADUs do you want to allow on a lot? Under what conditions, if any, might it be appropriate to allow more than 1 ADU on a lot? And should allowing additional ADUs be tied to something else, like design standards that would limit the impact of the ADU on the appearance of a property, say, from the street? And in this image, I chose it very carefully because it's showing you what that would look like. Like if you were to do an addition. So say this is the street-facing part of this house, and you're doing an addition off the back, and then another ADU in the alley, it might look like this. You see 1 front door from the street, but you see 3 power meters, and you see a tiny entrance where you go through to access the other 2 units. And there's 2 mailboxes up here. I'm going to the 3rd guy get this mail. But almost invisible. You really have to look closely to tell that this is not a single-family house, right? So, here's the questions on this one. Orange option, single ADU per lot. Just allow 1 ADU per lot, either a conversion or a detached structure, but not both. Option 2, the blue option, would be to allow limited additional ADUs under defined conditions. So more than 1 ADU might be allowed under specific circumstances, such as if you make one of them affordable, or if it's owner-occupied, or if the lot is big enough to support it, maybe not allow 2 on super skinny lots, or allowing 1 internal conversion plus 1 detached. The green option would just be allow more than 1 ADU per lot. Multiple ADUs could be allowed more broadly and regulated primarily by height, setbacks, lot coverage, and other site standards rather than a strict numerical cap on how many ADUs would be allowed. Topic 7 relates to ownership. structure and pathways to homeownership. So with this topic, we want to explore whether ADUs should be required to remain under common ownership with the primary home, or whether separate ownership structures should be allowed. Essentially, with this question, we're asking, should ADUs just be rentals, or for family members, or are you allowed to sell someone an ADU after you build it? Allowing the separate sale of ADUs might expand entry-level home ownership opportunities, support shared equity models, and provide additional financial flexibility for homeowners. Prohibiting ADUs from being sold separately might reinforce their accessory nature and limit perceived neighborhood change. So when there are multiple homes on a single parcel, how important is it that residents be given a pathway to ownership, such as through housing cooperatives, condominiums, or tiny fee-simple lot splits? On this one, option one, the orange option, would require common ownership. The primary home and the ADU must remain under the same ownership. The blue option, conditional ownership flexibility, would allow separate ownership under defined conditions, such as with owner occupancy requirements, affordability commitments, or limits on the total number of homes on a parcel. The third option, the green option, would be to broadly allow separate ownership and to allow ADUs to be separately owned through a condominium structure, through a housing co-op, or through a tiny lot split. Okay, finally, the last topic is barriers to building an ADU. In this topic, we really just want to give you more of an opportunity to tell us what barriers you think would matter most. What are the ones we should focus on first as we're attempting to streamline the regulatory process to review and approve ADUs? And so we just have a menu of different potential barriers to building an ADU. We want you to just tell us which ones you think we should tackle. And if you want to add one, just ask for a sticky. We'll give you a sticky and a pen, and you can add one to the board. So now it's time for the voting exercise. And okay, so let's see. I have some instructions. Are they written? No. So you all have one color of stickies, and that color is green. Is that correct?
Sure.
Okay. So first round of voting, we want you to go and vote the green stickies for which of these options, 1, 2, or 3, orange, blue, or green, resonates most for you for each topic. Then, when you're done with that, come back and we will give you a second color of sticky. And that second one is we want you to tell us which of these between boards, policy topics 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 mainly, which of those are the most important for you. And so those we'll be able to tell, but we want you to just put it somewhere on that policy topic.